Welcome to a very special edition of Black Market Reads, brought to you by the Givens Foundation for African American Literature in proud partnership with the Minnesota Humanities Center. In 1926, Dr. Carter G. Woodson introduced Negro History Week to build a durable, year-round engagement with Black history and cultural memory. 100 years later, we are honoring that exact vision by activating a public humanities initiative that proves Black history lives all year long, not just in February. This season, we're charting a unique course at the exact intersection where African American literature and the public humanities meet, exploring how our stories serve as an archive, evidence, and an active tool for social liberation. Today, to launch this centennial initiative, we are diving into the core of what the humanities mean for our collective future.
For the smart and free thinking, welcome to Black Market Reads with your host, Lissa Jones.
To kick off this vital conversation, we're joined today by Kevin Lindsay, CEO of the Minnesota Humanities Center. Kevin is a passionate champion for public humanities, legal mind, and a civic leader dedicated to using the humanities to deepen community connection and understanding. Kevin, welcome to Black Market Reads.
Oh, Lissa, thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Do you mind if we dive right into it?
I don't mind at all.
People often think of the humanities as abstract, as academic subjects, but you treat them as living public practice. To ground our listeners, how do you define the humanities? And why are they uniquely critical to our world right now?
No, I appreciate the question, and I understand sort of the confusion by people because if they were to take out their phone and ask, well, how would you define the humanities? They might see academic subjects such as religion, or they might hear about philosophy or history or literature or civics and jurisprudence. What they would find is these topics would talk about what it means to be human and what's the relationship to our past history and how we can govern ourselves. The one through line through all of those academic subjects is they're all conveyed through the power of story. The stories that we learn in the families that we're born in and the families that we make through our friends, I like to think of those as academic subjects, right, as religion and ethics and philosophy in that space. When I think we go off and become educated in the world, sometimes within a public school education or a private school, or just sometimes a school of hard knocks, that's literature and history showing up, again, stories that we tell ourselves. And then as someone who has practiced law, if you open up a legal opinion, it's a moral and it's a story wrapped up. So within that space, we think of civics or jurisprudence. Again, those stories are powerful because they tell us what's right and what's wrong. So to me, the humanities are the powerful stories that we tell ourselves to help us understand, navigate who we are as people, who we want to be in our community, and what kind of government we would like to be a part of.
I am absolutely blown away. It's about how we are human in everything we're doing.
That's correct.
Oh, that's a beautiful definition. Kevin, if the humanities are how we make sense of the human experience, what happens to a society when it stops investing in them?
It's critically important, and specifically in our unique form of government. Again, we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And this idea that we're going to not be bound by monarchies, we're not going to be bound by the most powerful army dictating what kind of government we're going to subscribe ourselves to. But it really goes back to the consent of the governed. The actual people are the ones that are in control of their own destiny, and they get to determine what kind of government that they would like. Well, that requires us to really appreciate and know one another, trust one another, and build relationships with one another. That's why it is critically important, if our democracy is to continue to flourish, that we see and value one another. And we only see and value one another if we're sharing our respective stories, if we're taking time to listen to one another, if we're seeing more connection as opposed to othering other individuals within society. It's very easy for us to separate and distinguish and say what's different, but obviously there's much more, as Maya Angelou says, that we are alike than we are different. When we do that, our democracy flourishes. When we do the opposite, our democracy becomes frayed.
Kevin, you've beautifully mapped out why the humanities matter globally. I want to narrow our focus now. I'd like to look through the lens of this specific partnership between Givens and the humanities, how these broad human truths find their specific home in Black storytelling. What do you think?
Well, I'm very excited about this particular partnership. And again, I would be remiss not to go back and underscore the significance of 100 years ago. Dr. Carter G. Woodson built off of what he did in response to a film that a lot of us know as The Birth of a Nation. And this idea that instead of allowing a larger narrative, which was permissive in the United States at that time, that Black people were lazy or stupid or couldn't control their own desires, which was kind of what was depicted in the film Birth of a Nation. He said, no, we're actually a very proud people that have built amazing civilizations. World's not in the United States, not always aware of that. So we need to go back to that history and we need to share that. We need to share the great things that we have done here on these shores. We should aspire and tell our stories of the great minds within our respective communities. This idea of resilience and building for the longer term, for the longer time that we're here, was incredibly important. So collections such as the Givens that have captured those respective stories, they should be amplified and lifted up, and that we as all Americans should appreciate the fact that, paraphrasing one of Minnesota's favorite sons, if you really want to know how well government is doing, you ask the folks that have not always been invited to the table. So these stories give us great insight to how we're doing as a country and where we can potentially do even better going forward.
I love the agency that comes with being able to determine for your own self how you describe yourself and how you define your life. I think at this time, when voting rights are under threat, when narrative is everything, who owns the propaganda owns the war. Why humanities? Why now? Why African American literature?
Well, African American literature is critically important to understanding who we are. And as you say, it's important for our community to understand the lessons from the past. You mentioned voting, and as you know, I had a chance to serve as a commissioner of human rights for the state of Minnesota. So there was an opportunity to listen to a great elder within our community, Dr. Josie Johnson, and hearing the respective stories of her father taking her along with him to register people to vote and understanding the difficulties and understanding the challenges. It was important to have that history poured into me so I could pour it into folks here in Minnesota. And as a result of her pouring that into me and sharing that history, and then I being a receptacle to pass it on, Minnesota was the only state in 2012 to defeat a voter limitation initiative in the entire country. So Black History matters when we share it with one another and take time to pass it on to the next generation. So I'm hoping, I'm not sure when it will happen, but I know that the scholars such as Davu and others that are able to pour in that history, that there is going to be a young Black girl or a young Black man who's going to be able to take it and they're going to make a positive change in the world.
This is Black Market Reads. I'm your host, Lissa Jones. Our guest in studio is the Chief Executive Officer of the Minnesota Humanities Center, Kevin Lindsay. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Black Market Reads, a series of conversations highlighting the Black literary voices of today. Join the conversation. For more great content about authors you love, visit us at blackmarketreads.com. Your opinion counts. Let us know what you think. Share us with your friends. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts.
Welcome back to Black Market Reads. I'm your host, Lissa Jones. I'm in studio today with Kevin Lindsay, the CEO of the Minnesota Humanities Center. We're speaking about the intersection of African American literature and the humanities. Welcome back, Kevin. The Givens Foundation operates from the belief that literature is a pathway to liberation. Where do African American literature and the public humanities intersect for you? And how do Black stories function as our cultural archive?
Well, those are fantastic questions. If I'm thinking about it from the Minnesota Humanities Center lens, One of the intersections for collections such as Gibbons and Black History is the work that we have been doing actually since our existence with teachers, but I'll give a more recent one, and that is the professional development work being done under the leadership of Dr. Kathleen Gerber at the University of Minnesota and what we refer to as the ERAS project. So every era that a social studies teacher would be responsible for discussing with their students and educating their students about, we have prepared professional development for that teacher with scholars here within the state of Minnesota as well as across the country. And this is a free service for teachers to be able to access this information. We situate it with the social studies ethnic standards. So all teachers know that this complies with the social studies standards. They don't have to wonder or question. We've done that work with the Minnesota Department of Education. We also have partnered with the Minnesota Department of Education with Holocaust, Indigenous genocide, and evidence of mass terror. That was an initiative of the Department of Education and working with the Minnesota legislature to again provide teachers with materials that they then can use to talk about these difficult subjects within their respective classrooms. One of the stories that is included within that respective unit of information is the story of the lynching in Duluth. So we had a chance to partner with the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial and individuals such as Carl Crawford, who had led that group as an executive director in the past, to put together materials that can be used in the classroom. Some of that partnership also resulted in a collaboration with the Minnesota District Court. Then attorney Jerry Blackwell, now federal court judge Jerry Blackwell, was part of that respective effort in providing information. We also talked about healing and reconciliation within that space. So Max Mason was the individual who was actually convicted of rape in that respective case. And that became the very first posthumous pardon, Jerry's efforts. So within the materials, we talk about the effort of securing a pardon and learning the story about how government can try to right a wrong even after the fact, in this case posthumously, but nonetheless trying to clean or clarify the record.
I stand amazed that I am a woman who has lived here my whole life, who is deeply steeped in African American life here. I had no idea that Judge Blackwell and you had done that work together. I'm deeply impressed and will do more research. For those who are listening, the Clayton Jackson McGee story is a terrible one. They were lynched in Duluth. Again, the old traditional story, somebody messed with a white woman, so we go and we kill them. And we go outside the law and we call it justice. So when Kevin speaks about a posthumous pardon, I hope that it gives us cause to pause. That even after all that time, justice can be served. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, when we look at the current state of African American scholarship within the broader humanities ecosystem, what do you see as its greatest strengths? And where are the areas that still need urgent defense or expansion?
I see the commitment to being a bridge to the past. I appreciate around the country the support that scholars have for one another to push things forward. I appreciate the deep dedication to the craft. So, for example, here within the state of Minnesota, there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Christopher Lehman, who's won a Minnesota Book Award. His book, Slavery in the North Star State, and then followed up the Eliza Winston story. Very deeply researched, documented work. That attention to craft is something that has continued, and I would humbly submit that Dr. Woodson would be appreciative of the efforts of the individuals who have followed in his respective footsteps. Of course, one of the challenges in this moment is that there is an assault on arts and humanities in this country. So, for the National Endowment for the Humanities, the president, through the NEH, terminated funding for NEH back in April of 25. No council, as of this moment in time, so just before June 1, has received any funding from NEH. No council has received any funding. And there has been communication to suggest that several executive orders signed by the president might be used to limit the creation of the work that is done by some of the respective councils. Now, I want to be clear here that we've not had any official action, just the suggestion being put on the NEH's website about executive orders and that they might be guided in their future decisions. We haven't seen that respective act yet, but it feels like all of the, as they say, dominoes are being set up to be pushed over in that direction. It's a critically important time for folks to understand that being able to exercise one's free speech, being able to talk about history in an honest way, to be able to celebrate culture and to celebrate people, these aren't nice to haves. These are essential to haves. And we will see how this conversation plays out and whether the American experiment continues going forward. I like to think of being a half full person, but I also appreciate not being oblivious to the challenge ahead. With hope, perseverance, dedication, and partnership with others, I feel hopeful, but I know that it will be a fight.
Dr. Woodson, those who have no ideas what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration that comes from the learning of their biography and history. And that's what to me is the most at risk, is the inspiration that is provided by seeing yourself, by seeing your people do things that are amazing, by knowing that somebody who looked like you built this, that by knowing that somebody who looked like you wrote this. That's what I worry about, Kevin, that we'll lose the inspiration that comes from the learning of our biography and history.
I know that you were a part of the tour that Dr. Lonnie Bunch undertook a little more than a decade ago. Dr. Lonnie Bunch is the president and CEO of the Smithsonian, and he was the point person ensuring that the African American Museum at the Smithsonian was created. He had a chance to go across the entire state, and I was very fortunate to be in his presence on a couple of occasions here and to see the people of Minnesota share their stories and talk about what's in their attics and to pour out their stories to him, because you could see swelling in them the pride that they had about telling their story and wanting to make sure that that could be in an edifice in DC for everybody in America to experience. So you couldn't have said it better, that this is critically important for people to see themselves and to hold a hand of their child or their nephew or their niece or someone that they love and being able to pass on that respective story.
Mm. Thank you, Kevin. Preserving the archive is historical, but applying it is contemporary. Our initiative this year, Kevin, is called Beyond February, signaling a move away from seasonal observation and toward active, year-round public practice. What can the humanities specifically offer us as we seek real, tangible change in our neighborhoods and in the world?
Well, the humanities, to paraphrase our favorite son here, Gordon Parks, it allows you a choice of weapons to use, whether that's photography, whether that's filmmaking, whether that's writing, whether that's music. He was a prominent musician as well. It allows every individual to find something that speaks to their heart and then to be able to share it to the world. There are legitimate reasons why February was picked. I mean, it was to honor Lincoln and Douglas, and we appreciate that. But we also know that the amount of joy, the amount of celebration, the amount of things that were created out of the Black experience can't be contained in any one month, right? They need to flow throughout the entirety of the year. So, yes, you are very right. The humanities provide an opportunity to have a wide variety of mediums, a wide variety of tools in which to talk about the wide expanse of intelligence and brilliance and beauty and wonder that exists in the African American community.
I am so heartened by your answers. I'm just here sitting here smiling and just putting my hand on my chest. The beauty of Black culture cannot be contained. It can't be contained to a day, a month, even a year. It can't be contained in 100 1,000 years. I'm so grateful that you're about action. When you speak about a choice of weapons for the Minnesotan who's listening right now, who wants to move from listening to active participation, what's one daily public humanities practice they might adopt?
Boy, that's a great question. I think for myself, I love podcasts. I love hearing people discuss current issues and trying to find a way to build upon those respective issues. I appreciate the artistic work of a project we helped to fund, which was the variety of different billboards that were created after the death of murder, I should say, murder of Mr. George Floyd. So, one of the things that I really appreciate is how art can say some things that maybe the spoken words fall short of. Now, again, this is challenging for me because anyone in my family will tell you that if it goes beyond stick figures, I can't really draw that. But I do really appreciate the artists that are able to convey so much in their respective art. We were very fortunate and blessed to have a project, The Making of America, with our good friends Monique Linder at OMG Studios. So that'll be at the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and this will be an opportunity to showcase some of the art there. We also had a chance to travel out to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and meet with one of the curators there to talk about the history of art. And again, what's actually behind those images? Why is it conveyed the way that it is? What kind of constraints are on the artist, or what was the artist maybe on the front edge leading and trying to say about society? The challenge is it's a little bit like Louis Armstrong in A Wonderful World. When you ask that question of how can it be, I can think about it for me, but I also appreciate the children that are born. They'll know more than me, and I just need to be able to provide them with a wide breadth of materials and information for them to create a more beautiful world.
Why do Black people, specifically African Americans, need to be involved in the humanities? Why do we care?
African Americans have been amazing at its ability to utilize the tools such as the humanities to shape and call upon America to live up to its highest ideals. And if there was ever a time for America to be reminded of its highest ideals and to be encouraged to live up to them, again, within the National Endowment for Humanities language and the language of various presidents that I've been reading about the Declaration of Independence, it talks about taking these ideals and exposing them to the world. This idea of the American experiment, it's not amazing that we threw off the British. What's amazing is that we established a government of people, by the people, they having the ability and having the military be subordinate to it. These are wide ideals that should be shared. This idea that we should love one another and work with one another. These ideas of liberty, of equality, of justice. These are the things that we need to remind ourselves when we hear different messages about greed, about limited supply, about not having enough for everyone. Who is going to fill that vacuum? Who is going to assume leadership? Dr. Woodson did it 100 years ago. Dr. King, Fannie Lou Hamer, so many others. There's too many to name. There's a rich heritage, a history for African Americans that they can draw upon and to be leaders for the next 250 years. That's why it's so critically important for African Americans to assume that leadership.
Kevin Lindsay, the Chief Executive Officer of the Minnesota Humanities Center, has just called the community to action. Why should we care? Because our stories are for us to preserve, to amplify, to protect, to promote. We were here, and we need to document it. If, like Lonnie Bunch, you have things in your attic you want to give, you can give them to the Givens Collection for African American Literature and Life at the University of Minnesota, Elmer Anderson Libraries. If you want to see the humanities in action, follow the Minnesota Humanities Center. Kevin, I see a lot of leaders, a lot of days, and there are very few who have aligned their values with their actions, but you have done so consistently for as long as I've known you. And thank you for the courage you continue to display as the president of the Minnesota Humanities Center. It doesn't go without noticing, Kevin.
Listen, thank you so much for this opportunity and for your steadfast friendship. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Kevin Lindsay, I just want to say thank you, my friend, for anchoring the launch of this critical series with us today. Your belief in it brought us here. To our listeners, this conversation is just the beginning of a year-long ecosystem. We're inviting you, Kevin and I, to move beyond February with us. Head over to the Gibbons Foundation website to explore our curated 10 Books for 10 Decades digital hub. Log on to the Minnesota Humanities Center and join us at the many events they're going to be having. I'll see you there. In the meantime and in between time, thank you for listening to Black Market Reads. Thank you, my friend, for being our guest. Keep reading, keep questioning, and we'll see you again next time. I'm your host, Lissa Jones, and this is Black Market Reads. Our production team for this episode includes co-producers Lissa Jones and Edie French, technical director Paul Augustin, the voice Yo Derek, and our artist of inspiration, Takumba T. Aiken. This is Black Market Reads. I'm Lissa Jones. Aluta Kontinua. The struggle continues.